well, if things weren't bad enough with the open borders, if it wasn't dystopian enough under COVID lockdowns, then perhaps we can focus our attention on the economy. That should cheer us up, shouldn't it? Yeah, no, it's really not going to. But let's speak to Justin Urquhart Stewart, economist and chairman of the Regional Investment Platform, because he always does cheer me up. He makes doom and gloom seem, well, a little less horrible. Justin, I want to start off looking at COVID because it's the biggest story of today. The analysis of whether the government's approach was right. There was some lip service paid to the economic impact of lockdowns. There was a suggestion that perhaps there should have been a working group or a committee of experts who would look at the economic implications of the policies put into place. But I want you to actually spell out to me in numerical terms quite how devastating COVID was for our economy, how much we spent on COVID, how long this is going to take us to pay back, whether it can be paid back.
It's a huge subject, and I have to say that report hasn't helped. There's another word for you coming out now, which is behindsight. That's looking backwards at a report whilst talking out of your bottom. When you actually look at the information it's come out with, frankly, there's nothing new there. It's just a huge amount of money, and we've learned, appear to have learned very little indeed. Now, how much it's actually cost us? Well, there are all sorts of different ways of looking at this, but basically, if you looked at actually how much we've lost by the economy going backwards and actually being forced to stop, then you're talking about several £billion. In terms of extra costs, well, we know that's probably going to be, in terms of what's being used for Eat Out that period, you're talking about another £4 billion for that. So the answer is a significant proportion of our annual gross domestic product would have been actually taken away. How much? You're probably talking about 5 or 6%. That may not sound a great deal, but in terms of money, in terms of money going through the government or tax being earned, it's a big number indeed at a time when we couldn't afford it. Now, there's one thing we did have. We had this thing called quantitative easing, which, go back into an economics book 30 years ago, it won't be in there because no one had heard of it before. But basically, it's the ability of the government to be able to simplistically provide itself with more money by effectively printing it via the Bank of England. Funny enough, actually, one of the largest owners of government debt is the government. It sounds rather perverse. So in theory, twice a year, you should be getting a coupon or a dividend worth probably in the region of about 30 billion, which would actually be paid by the government to the government. You couldn't make this up. And so we're in a strange position. Now, let's also look at the situation. The most important part, and you were quite rightly highlighting this just now, in terms of the impact of small businesses, because remember, the small businesses are the largest employer in the country. This past year, despite what's happened, it looks as though 800,000 new businesses have been set up. And it takes real courage to be able to do that, because it's your money, probably your house is on the line, your family's going to go through some difficulties. I remember having to do this myself, saying, I'm terribly sorry, darling, but actually we're not going to have so much money for the time being. In fact, probably none until the business grows and it gets going. These are the people who need to be supported and helped. As it was, what you saw with furlough is, as you quite right describing it, the ability to go to have a paid-for holiday, do nothing. But it's my rights. Well, if it's your rights, what are your obligations? Yeah. Your obligations are actually, therefore, to be working hard, providing your fair bit into the country. And so, for example, I think it's absolutely right that where people have benefited from this, that over time there will be a payback for it. And people are seen to be paying back because that's a fair thing to do. You're not making people, pushing them over the edge. What you try to do is have a reasonable balance so people understand this. We were all in it together, and therefore we all have to pay a certain amount for it. And we're going to see on Wednesday when you're going to have the Joan Collins budget, for those with broader shoulders, or in her case padded shoulders, we're going to have to apparently actually support more of this. This is where things are so unfair. People have been looking at those saying, look, let's go milk the filthy rich. You don't get wealthy through taxation. The tax does not create wealth. Wealth provides you the opportunity to have tax. It's the wrong way round, and that's the message that needs to be put across. Unfortunately, that's not what we're hearing.
It is about, to me, it is about fairness. And I say this from my own perspective, and actually some of the callers today who I think feel the same way, which is, my circumstances were unique. I'd been in the European Parliament, we'd left the EU, and then all of a sudden COVID happened. So I'd found myself not in work, not in employment. I hadn't set up a business. The timing of it sucked, right? Yep. And so I ended up losing a lot lot of money because there was no scheme I could use, no furlough I could take, no grant for my business, no government loan, no kickback, no nothing. I just had to make do, use my savings to get by, and try and do the only work I could do from home, which was bashing out newspaper columns, which really don't pay very much. So I lost a lot of money. And then what really sticks in my core is there were people who made money, took out the loans, had a paid for holiday on furlough. Now I find myself in a job and I'm being taxed. I'm being taxed to the hilt to pay for those people. And that to me doesn't seem fair. To me, there should be an exemption. If you took furlough, then you pay furlough back. It shouldn't be me doing that.
No, that's absolutely right. Money for nothing, I'm afraid that's not acceptable. Money, yes, with an obligation to actually pay all or part or whatever is necessary, a feeling that you actually must be giving back for what you've actually received. Now, the government's got to try and do this on a much broader scale because we're living beyond our means. That means educating the population into the idea that there's only a finite amount of money we can have, and therefore we can split that up. Try and make it a position where it's therefore understandable to people, and we're going to see this in horrors, I think, on Wednesday, because instead of having actually a nice, simple, I don't approve of it, but a nice, simple tax like income tax, we all know what that is. It raises a lot of money really rather quickly, and it's relatively fair on the basis that everybody's working actually will be paying for it. But, not working, but it's got assets. But what you don't see is therefore people understanding that where this money is actually going, and you can't just keep on giving it away with more lovely little policies, as we saw in the last days of Gordon Brown, coming up with all sorts of spurious ideas, which, of course, the next government are going to have to go and pay for. This comes down then to proper financial education. And it is a way where people understand this is what I'm getting, this is the benefit I got, now here are my obligations to pay some back. Also, make taxation more positive in terms of if you are paying more taxation, I tell you what, we're going to give you a discount on your inheritance tax or something like that, something tangible which people say, I can understand this is now, there is something in it for me, not just all negative.
I totally agree, Justin. We've got to leave it there. I could talk to you all day. You're so delightful. Say hello to your pussycats for me, please. The brilliant Justin Urquhart Stewart. It does seem to me just always grossly, grossly unfair. There are people who just live off the handouts. And when people go, the government should pay. The government should... When you say the government should pay, that's the taxpayer. It's not a magic money tree. You can't keep knocking on the same people's doors to fork out and give them nothing in return. I think Justin had a brilliant point there. Right, we're going to